Coming up in this episode.
If you make something and you have a lot of people that are like, this is the best album I've heard this year, and then also a lot of people that are like, yeah, I don't get it, why do you think it's so good? I think then you have, like, I have done my job. I think I listen to a lot of music where just like the raw vocals of somebody singing it just like a little bit shittier just like resonated more with me, and that was something that I wanted to explore with this record. It starts with like you posting a reel and just like seeing that somebody likes it, like Will Ramos liked your reel, and you're like, what does it mean? He was on the toilet and like he was like lol, and he like tapped his finger. Amazing. Lorna Shore x Vianova world tour coming soon.
When I was first introduced to Vianova 2.5 years ago, I immediately loved their music. But then something unusual happened. As they started releasing singles for their most recent album, I largely loved it, but a good chunk of my brain found it confusing and odd. There was simplicity but complexity. There was quietness and yet chaos as well. And it was so much to take in. It was a very unexpected turn of events, often in the singles. But then as I heard them more and spent more time with it, this new realm of music from Vianova started unlocking in my brain. And I've now listened to their recent album at least 30 times from start to finish. I think what I perceived initially as some kind of madness was actually genius. And I'm so excited to have a chance today to chat to Alex Kerski from Vianova about this album and where the band is today. So, Alex, welcome. Thank you for your time here. And mate, I've kind of become slightly addicted to that album. There's so much ear candy in it and details that it just gives and gives on future listens. And it's a joy to immerse myself in that. And yet, I remember when I first listened to one of the earlier singles, I was very confused by it. And you're either yourself or the band commented in the video saying, thanks for your respectful opinion, dude. Right now, we're all about exploration and doing what feels right to us. We really don't want to write just another metalcore song, but also get that it may not be for everyone. Shit will only get weirder from here on. And you weren't wrong. Because that was before the likes of like, oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been astounding. What I'm really interested to know is, when you were creating these songs and then releasing them, did you have the strength of conviction knowing like, if people give this the time, I think they will get this. I think they'll understand it. Or was it such a creative boundary push that you didn't really know at any point how people might receive it?
Yeah, those are a lot of topics to dive in. First of all, thank you for having me. For anybody listening, you might hear that I'm a bit sick right now. However, it's very refreshing to have a conversation like that just because I've been so bored the last few days, and I'm happy to dive into the record now that has been out for a few weeks, I think over a month, and people like Steve here have given it a shot and ended up liking it. So that's very interesting. So yeah, I mean, regarding those things, I think for this whole conversation, there will be parts where I can speak only for myself, obviously, and sometimes can also speak for the guys, just because I know like how like their stance is on stuff like that, right? And maybe we'll dive into that deeply. But like, I think I would tackle this one from my perspective. The thing is, like, I noticed that what like really draws me in right now, or like for the last few years, has always been something that is a little bit more, in a way, like dangerous or like unsafe. I would say that has been something that I enjoy, and in a way, I feel like as an artist, like you always have the chance to, I guess, renegotiate like the boundaries of like genres. And maybe this sounds like a very like pretentious statement, because like in my opinion, it's not like we have reinvented music or anything. It's maybe probably just that the things that we are doing like in the space of metalcore are like maybe like are feeling very fresh. If you look at maybe more experimental music, somebody would say, okay, it's not that crazy what they're doing, it's more derivative. However, you have to view it in its context, obviously. um so yeah, that's definitely a factor there. So I personally, I always like something that is a bit more challenging and like feels true to me, and I really believe that as an artist, like I have to be like, in a way, a taste maker, but like of my own universe, you know what I mean? So like I like, what I really want to do is like curate something from my taste, from my experience, and then like give that to people, because like ultimately they don't know better than me. Like I think ultimately I, as an artist, in my like with my music or like my vocals or whatever like part of the music that I'm doing, I think I should be the specialist and know best. And like if people don't get it or like it doesn't resonate with them, like that's totally fine. I think my responsibility there is because, like, you could argue, yeah, of course, you would think that some people will listen to it and will be like, yeah, it's it's chaotic, it's a mess, it's shit, right? But I feel like I need to be that specialist, and I have to know ultimately, dude, like this is really cool. Maybe you just don't understand it yet, and ultimately, like again, that's something you can't really like anticipate how people react, and obviously there are people that don't like it, and I think you can maybe in a way gauge, is that a word? I think so, like, or measure this success in a way with like how many people it deeply resonates with, because I personally
Mm.
think like if you make something and you have a lot of people that are like, this is the best album I've heard this year, and then also a lot of people that are like, yeah, I don't get it, why do you think it's so good? I think then you have, like, I have done my job, I think, just because I would much rather make something that has a lot of like depth and character, and maybe like really resonates with a lot of people, but also like puts a lot of people off because it's not for them, and that's totally fine. So like ultimately I wouldn't even suggest that what we have done is like this revolutionary thing. It's just that I think it's like curated in a way where it's maybe a little bit more out there for the genre. It's still very fun, and yeah, if it resonates, like there are a lot of like stylistic choices that have been made like for the exact, like for that reason basically. I think like one example I can give right now, I mean, I'm a little bit like just talking in a monologue, but
Please.
one example I can give right now, just like as a vocalist, like one thing I did with this record opposed to the other ones, like I didn't double track vocals. I only had like one vocal track throughout like every song basically.
Oh,
um so, and if people like don't understand, this is usually what you do in like vocal production, right? You record takes, like clean takes, clean vocals, and usually you do like two takes in the middle, so like one main like singing take and one that's like below that, that's like mixed in about like, I don't know, 50, 60-ish percent, maybe lower depending on the producer, right? And what it does is like it thickens it up, and usually you're aiming for something that is like very well like produced and like sounds a little bit like larger than life, right? I also didn't use any pitch correction apart from like squire
Squire
talk,
talk. Yeah, yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
And that was just because like I listened to a lot of music where just like the raw vocals of somebody singing it just like a little bit shittier just like resonated more with me, and that was something that I wanted to explore with this record. I have to mention I still comped every vocal, so like I did combine takes, right, to like curate still larger than live take because I didn't sing it as like one thing. um However, like that's for instance one aspect that I put a lot of like effort and time and focus on, just because I wanted to craft just this vocal performance that is maybe not as perfect, and maybe like if you listen to any other like bigger produced metalcore band, you would say like, oh, their vocalist is so much better, and that also may be the case because all of these are like very good. However, like for me, it adds a layer of just like emotional expressiveness and depth that you don't get, I think, with like this perfect, like calmed, tuned vocal, Yeah.
I was That totally resonates. That makes sense. Yes, because there is a kind of rawness to some of the vocal delivery on this in particular, where it feels like you're at the pitch and you're correct, but it's kind of there's a danger to it. And I think because of a lot of the lyrical content, which is kind of vulnerable in a way, that makes sense, and it sort of brings the character out sonically to what's been said lyrically. So I can totally understand that choice. I think it'd be kind of odd now to think about it being very finely produced. I think that would take some of the soul out of it.
I mean, you can still do it in a way, and like you can also just there are like so many ways of just like doing it differently, and also like maybe keeping the expressiveness down maybe just a little bit to make it like more perfect. Maybe like you can also like pitch correct stuff in a way where it sounds more natural with like Melodyne or like the Cubase pitch corrector, where like you don't get the autotune effect, but like it still sounds more natural-ish, which a lot of people are doing. So like it's not like you can't do that.
Mm.
um Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that I just wanted to try out. And honestly, I was a lot more like stoked about it when I had the idea. When I ended up doing it, I was like, fuck, I like really have to get those takes right. And it like just took a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know I'm not saying that it's like therefore like better or more valuable than like doing it any other way. You know what I mean? It's
Oh
just
no.
something that like I think like just fit the expression of what I was going for with that record.
Yeah, that's certainly it's a stylistic choice,
Yeah.
which I think totally makes sense in the record that we can now enjoy. One thing I'm interested in that I noted, I think in the very first video of the new singles, with the new kind of presentation, is like this reminds me both visually but also sonically in places of Jamiroquai. And then later on in the obsolete video, there's like the Jamiroquai logo on a CD. And I was like, how early was that a reference for you for this kind of concept you're going
Yeah.
through?
Okay, there are two things because like I will answer this question, but also something popped into my mind regarding the
Please.
question before. I hope that's okay if I just like add
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
on there. So one thing I also wanted to mention where I know you said something about like us, yeah, like how our perception of this is and how out there we are. Like in a way, what's super interesting is like I think like Felix and me, like our guitarist and me, in a way like we're I think the conceptual drivers of like the musical aesthetic in a way, and for some reason it didn't take a lot of just like talking about it. Like we're just like on the same wave when we started this project, and like we've been getting the others on board over a long period of time, so that wasn't easy. I will say that. um and also like in a way like you kind of like end up writing this stuff and like trying to make up your own rules, like what you want to like do in this universe, right? So that was something we considered a lot. However, at a certain point, you're so deep into it and like you look at songs in a way that's a little bit different maybe, so like more like structure-ish, where like stuff isn't as crazy anymore. For instance, Mas Rapido, like before that came out, like we're like, okay, this is a single that in a way is like maybe a little bit more connected to our older sound because it's more metal-ish, right? So like it's a good single to put out first, but it like connects to like this newer universe we're like putting out now. And we really weren't like, okay, this is like the crazy one, right? Just because okay, you have like a main riff, you have like this, you have the breakdown, and then we put it out in like metal, like the small bubble of metalcore that we were in, they were going crazy. And like I saw your comment like being like, I think you didn't even post a reaction. You were like, yeah, I reviewed it on stream, but like it was weird. I'm not sure what to think about it. And I was like a bit baffled by that. Not because I was offended by your opinion, but I was like, wow, I wouldn't have thought that this was so far out there.
Right.
And I even like I have a friend of mine who is also like a like progressive metal musician, Tom Fountainhead, shout out. And but he does like tech dev stuff, but like we like just because like he did his album like while we were working on ours, and we were just like talking a lot about stuff, and I was showing him the songs, and he was like, yeah, Mas Rapido, yeah, it's a cool song, but I don't think it's the best one. I don't think it's the most craziest one. It's not like it's not impressing him that much, which well, you know, he's honest to me, and I really appreciate that. And so I was like, yeah, probably like people won't go that crazy about that song. And then we put it out, and like for some reason it was like like just seemed way crazier to the outside, just because like for me personally, like I see the structure of that song, and for me it's not that
Mm.
out of the ordinary in a way, you know, in a way it's set up. But obviously like now I see, okay, right, in the context of the whole thing, it's way more like it can seem way more wild, right? So that's the first thing. Then the second thing was the Jamiroquai reference, right?
Yes.
I mean, um the thing is like one thing that I personally wanted to embrace in a way for this record was like the influences that I grew up with, just because I think like metal or metalcore in general is a very like chronically online genre. And the thing is like I'm also very like chronically online if you couldn't tell by our marketing. Lol. um However, like yeah, I was just like also like just the stuff I was listening to during that time, and like that I was going back to. But like Jamaica is the favorite band of my father, so like I really grew up with that. He owns all the CDs. I listen to them in the car. I like I think I have some here in my apartment also. So like that was something that I've grown up with. The guys weren't as familiar with that, so I don't think it really played a big part in like the instrumental inspiration, but I would consider that it's like part of my musical DNA just because I've grown up with it. Also like stuff like George Benson, maybe Michael Jackson also. Um, and I wouldn't consider, like, I wouldn't say that like what we're doing right now aesthetically is just like based on Jamaica. It's just like something that's like in here, and like this had
Mm.
like I know like I actually like I saw it with a friend of mine, and I grabbed it off like a flea market, like that's right next to my door. So like there's this aspect also where it wasn't like, oh, Jamaica has one. I was just like, I saw it with like a similar one with a friend. I was like, yeah, maybe we could make that work, and then I grabbed one for like $30. So in a way, like you could say that like just because like I was exposed to him, maybe it had an influence just because I would consider it as an option in the style. Honestly, I wear it as a badge of honor. Like every time somebody says it, it's not like when people say, "Oh yeah, they sound like you know this metal band. They sound like Bad Omens. We don't sound like Bad Omens." They be like, "No, don't compare us to the big band." Like when somebody says Jamiroquai, I'm happy. Honestly, just because I love the music so much. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly mean it as a compliment. I mean, Jim Jamiroquai's got some absolute fucking bangers,
dude. Yeah,
and great funk and soul within their music as well. But also some daring, creative moments and electronics, and they're kind of interesting. And yeah, perhaps that's sort of what I was wondering is how much of that was I'd love to take some of that inspiration and specifically put that in, or whether that's kind of just background radiation that's in your being that's kind of come through in unexpected ways, which sounds like it's more kind of along those lines there.
yeah. I would say both. Both really. Like in a way, you always like I do actively pick my references and like what I'm like what kind of style I'm going for, but obviously there's like this aspect of like just what you've been like consuming your whole life and what like really resonates with you, I think, and like what you want to write. So yeah, both of these are in there for sure.
Now, having this album be out and people being able to appreciate it and loop it kind of from start to finish and really dig into it, I I'm imagining that many people like myself are finding depth and joy within this record in particular. And I'm curious, I'm now seeing as well there's an uptake on other areas. You're now with Future History Management, which is no
Yes.
small deal. At what point was that coming into the picture? Was that post the first single or two, and then they're kind of like, "This is interesting what you're doing"? When did they kind of come into your lives, as it were?
Yeah. You're the first person that actually asked us about this in like the the interview context. So much love to Future History and like shout out to them. Honestly, couldn't be happier to be with them. Yeah, I think that was, I mean, we're co-managed by like two guys from them, Connor and Leander, right? And Connor was the guy that in a way like he didn't like approach us outright. It was that he he followed us on Instagram and he like hit us up one day and he was just like, "Yeah, dude, just want to let you know I'm a big fan of the band right now, with," and he just said something along the lines of like, "Yeah, with music being a career," and I kind of resonate with that. Like it's very hard to just find new stuff also like in the lane that you're working in, like to get excited about. And like he just said like for him that's Vianova right now. And for like it was funny because like apparently he's been following us for like a year, but like just now dug in into the music. I think that was like after Wheel of Fortune ish, where like he reached out. Thing is, at that point we were with a smaller management. I think I have to notice that for like talk about that for transparency's sake. However, they were based in America. First of all, they were like, yeah, a smaller company, and like the thing is like we were very just like DIY. Like basically everything we did, just like we did ourselves, basically, right? So like the marketing, video, like concept, whatever. Like I do that, like on the back end, organizational stuff. Also, we do that, like the label deal. Like I've known Robin from a Rising Empire for some time, so like that's all stuff that in a way we've taken care of. And these guys have been with us, like more like counseling us on like specific stuff. So like I totally appreciate that, but in a way we felt like, yeah, maybe like there was like more that could be done, you know what I mean, like not wanting to shit on them, but it's just like I think we also like made it very hard for them to get in because like you have different time zones, we're doing our stuff
Mm.
ourselves, so like and like at that point obviously there's like, wait, there's this guy from fucking Future History Management who's a fan of the band. But like Connor, like he was very polite, and maybe this is interesting for people who just want to know how this stuff like happens behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
um so yeah, like Connor, like he didn't even approach us, like he didn't even ask us about like doing a management thing, just because like he knew at the time that we were in a management situation from our booking agent. We already had Jake, shout out Jake, best guy, I love him. And but like I was asking Jake, I was like, dude, the Connor guy. It's funny, they were like football buddies because they're both like Newcastle fans. Maybe you know Newcastle. Like it's a whole thing, man. Yeah. And I was like, Jake, do you think like Connor would like to manage us? Like it was like when you're in high school and you're like, do you think Stephanie would go to the ball with me? And like, yeah, man, Stephanie thinks you're awesome. I'm like, yeah. Like, do you think Connor would manage us? He was like, yeah, Connor really loves the band. I'm sure he would but like he really doesn't want to like, tread on somebody's toes, because it's like really like not really something you do where you just like snatch out like other bands from management, right? And like we were like, fuck, what do we do? This was like it's like when you're in a relationship but you kind of have a crush, and like I don't know, weird
I follow you.
metaphors, you know what I mean, like, right? Okay, so like at that point, like I straight up approached him. I was like, hey dude, so thing is like we're very self-sufficient. We would consider just like not working with the management. We would like really like I was basically like, hey dude, would you like consider managing us maybe? And he was like, yeah man, but like, you gotta like figure your stuff out. And like at the same time, obviously, well, like we scheduled an appointment with our manager at the time, and we are like, hey man, no offense, but like there's this opportunity. And like obviously like he wasn't happy, and that I totally get that. But um I mean, I feel like future histories, that was like those are like the moments where you kind of have to, I guess, like do what's best for you, just because like ultimately it's your career, right? And we've put in like so much work, and it honestly was a super good step, because like the guys are awesome. They've been like really in on the project, supporting us hardcore, and they're like really fans of the music also. And it like, yeah, it's just been amazing. So like we couldn't be happier than to have made this decision. And yeah, they have a good network. It's cool to be part of that. And yeah, have them like also kick our butts about the stuff where we are not so good at the moment.
Well, that's ideal. Yeah, definitely. When it comes to partnerships, some are right for a certain point in your career and a certain time, and they're exactly like their previous management. They're probably exactly what you needed at the time that was the case. And it's rare for that to last forever,
Yeah.
especially if you're looking to try different things and grow in different ways. You might need someone with different experience. Go like, we have some advice that could take you to a different place if that's where you want to be going.
Yeah,
Like,
totally. And I don't know if I'm like if I'm like treading on any rules right now, but like talking about these things openly, I think in a way what I want to just do is like be transparent about it, and also like take the responsibility for changing that, just because like it was our decision in the end, like just something I want to make clear. And yeah, we're happy with it. Yeah, and it's been super awesome, man.
that's super exciting. No, it's very well deserved, and I mean certainly when it comes to musicianship, I think your this album in particular is one that musicians and therefore other bands in the scene will hear and be like, "Fuck, this is unreal," and they'll be quite excited about it. And I bet that is something about how the response has been from Future History, and they're hearing what you're doing, be like, "That's different and exciting, and it hits." But I need to know more about it. Like it's got those kind of layers, and it's fascinating. Have you found since the release that your inbox is blowing up with other artists or people kind of getting in touch, being like, "Mate, this is good shit."
Yeah, I mean that's ultimately the thing that's super interesting, right? Um, as you may have noticed, I'm a big social media marketing guy with everything we've been doing. And obviously there are like bonuses where like you're like in the driver's seat of just like promoting yourself, and it's very effective if you do it right. However, it takes some time, and there are also like some downside sides to that, just because it's so like it just like takes so much out of you to just like do that all of the time, right? So I just like don't want to promote it straight up, be like it's the best thing ever. It has some
Mm,
downsides. You will probably be aware of that, like being a content creator yourself, right?
sure.
However, one upside that I didn't consider when we decided to push harder into that is that your favorite musicians and the managements and the producers and everybody, like they are all on Instagram, and they are all looking at metal content, right? So like it starts with It starts with like you posting a reel and just like seeing that somebody likes it. You know, like Will Ramos liked your reel from like the Ouya
Oh,
break, and he's like, yeah, Will Ramos just liked that, and you're like, what does it mean? He was on the toilet shitting, and like he was like, lol, and he like tapped his finger. Amazing. Lorna Shore X Vianova World Tour coming soon. Of course not, but like, you know, those are like the funny little instances where it
yeah,
happens, and then like there are like these moments where like those people follow you, and that's like, oh wow, like at the start obviously, like I don't want to like put these people on a pedestal, but obviously like to the teenager you, that's super cool, right? Because in a
yeah,
way you get acknowledged. And also like what I think is super special about that is, in a way, like this whole bubble of musicians, and that's something we've been experiencing. It's not something that you're just looking at, you're like now actively taking part of like this global culture of modern metal, which is super cool. So it's more like it's not like you're just looking up, it's like you're also looking around. Right?
yeah.
Obviously, like I'm still like, what the fuck are Bring Me the Horizon, Sleep Token doing on their tour? The production is amazing. Like I'm not going to pretend like, yeah, we're like the big boy band now, but still, like, and with stuff like that, I mean, like a few of the like the first like moments that happened was like when, which it was super cool. Like there's like this guy that like I think he arranged and conducted the um like architects at Royal Albert. No, at the Apple. No, at the studio thingy. You know, the Abbey Road studio
Okay.
thingy, like the orchestra. There's like an album where like architects are at the Abbey Road studios performing like their album with orchestra, right? And the guy that like orchestrated and arranged like the whole thing, like he was in like an early like fan with Mas Rapido, and he also like did like he conducted the Bring Me the Horizon at the Royal Albert Hall thing. Like that was him, right? And he was like,
Wow.
yeah, dude, I love the music, man. Would be super cool if like one day we ended up like working on something together. And for me, like at that time, like this stuff gets less crazy over time just because look, you get used to it like during a year. But like at that time I was like, holy fucking shit. You know, and we didn't like we tried to get him on whatever, all right. But like it didn't like end up like working out like schedule wise, but like still maybe one day we will have the time to do something, right? And it's the same thing with like just, man, like a lot of just musicians where like I will get hit up and somebody's like, just like I could talk about this probably for hours. Like one recent one where like I got invited to the Jelly Roll show in Berlin just because like their guitarist and I think their drummer also like are Vianova fans, and I was like chilling with the guitarist who was like super cool guy with just like talking music, and I was like, damn, it's super cool that like I just get to chat with this guy who's also really passionate about this, and he's like from America, and and like opening for Post Malone, and we're just like hanging out. You know, like it's not
Sick.
it's less about like the them like the status side of it. I think like ultimately for me it's just like just being able to connect with like people that are into it like the same way you are, in a way. Like also we recently got to hang out with George Lever at Arctangent, like also super sweet guy.
Mm.
Special guy for sure, but like
Yeah,
super.
he's a character. I really
He's
like
a
it.
he's a character, but like, yeah, cool dude, really into music. Also, like just somebody who became like I think a friend of mine, Sam Kubrick from Shields, who like I'm not sure if like you know his solo music. He's in Shields. He also like does some ghostwriting for other bands, and he used to be the guitarist in a really big band. No further comments added. Uh,
Sure.
um, but yeah, maybe we should cut that out. I'm not sure, but like,
No, it's okay. No, yeah, some people might connect the dots, but we've said nothing, so it's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, like yeah, Sam Kubrick, but like he has the solo project called Kubrick, like just his last name. Um, and like I think like 2 or 3 years back, like it has been some of my favorite metal that has came out, and like I just like I think I stumbled upon it just because like I think like Connor Sweeney ex Loath like just posted it back like 3 years back, and I was like addicted to these songs just because like he's also like doing something like a pop funk hyper pop fusion metal kind of thing produced by George Lever, like so good and like so underappreciated. And I used to bump these songs, man, like yeah, just huge fan of like his work. And like yeah, it turns out like he became a fan of Vianova. We started chatting. Now we're taking Shields out on our UK tour. Like they're opening. also like advising some like them on a little bit of like social media stuff. But like, yeah, just been talking, and like it's so cool to see that in a way, like just this guy where like 3 years back I was just like bumping the music. I was like, yeah, this is so cool. Like now he's just like a guy that I'm talking to, and like we're friends, and just like we get to exchange, just like, yeah, just like talk about music and like exchange that passion. Like that's something really magical for me that I just don't get in my closer environment, just for obvious reasons, right? Yeah.
That's fabulous. Yeah, it must be. I suppose from what you're saying there, it is in one part. It must be quite validating that what you're doing is being received in a positive light by people who you respect, but also it's enriching you creatively as well because you're made to learn from these people and develop useful relationships that help everyone kind of learn and get better at their craft in some ways.
Dude, yeah. And I have to, I think it's also something that really like has to be like we have to attribute our growth in a way, the way we've been doing things to that, just because like, and I think that's like also if some upcoming musicians are listening to that, I think something that is super valuable is just like getting in contact with people that are kind of like doing the same thing that you are, but like sometimes even better. I think like one big driving factor, which I also have to shout those guys out, like Half Me, just because like their guitarist Chris, like he's also our videographer, and we've been working with him for I think like since like 3 years now, right? Like he did the first music video for Mind Flayer back in the day, and like at that time, like Half Me, they were like coming up, and like it always seems like they just started with singles, and like every single back then was like cooler than the one before, and like every like release felt bigger, and then they got signed to a Rising Empire, which at that time was like, whoa, there's like this small band from Hamburg that I didn't even knew existed a year ago, and now they're at a Rising. Like this is like, it's possible. And then like now, like
Mm.
then they released their album, and then they like toured Europe for the first time, and then they were like one of the first bands in Germany, like doing USA, which is also not very common for a band their stage. And like in a way, like I don't want to glaze them too much, but like I think what is very important is that you have like people that you know that are like doing stuff where like they break the barrier of what like you think could be possible for you, right? Because like if I don't see that, I would maybe end up being like, yeah, I don't think like, yeah, German bands, they don't tour in the US. And then you have like literally friends of yours that are doing it right now. You're like, okay, I guess German bands can tour in the US, even though if they're like still small, they don't make any money of it, and they come home like $3K in debt each. However they did it, right? So like then like
Mm.
I can be like, yeah, that's something I want to do too, and then I can like take a step back and be like, okay, if I want to do that, like how do I have to approach this? Okay, maybe we need like better branding. Like maybe I need to be really critical about like the way we approach this, and like make something that is like even better in my terms, you know? So I think like having that inspiration from for like the your not your immediate surroundings friend wise, because obviously my friends don't do this stuff like in Berlin, but like your music friends just like taking it to another level. I think that's very valuable to have like that competitive spirit in a friendly way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you're going to end up doing that for others as well in your own way.
Yeah,
Like I
hopefully.
think what this album and the releases of the singles in the way have done, I think that we will see the influence of this down the line at some point. I don't know how soon. It'll be a lagging effect, but it sort of highlights that if you're if your if your conviction is strong enough, there is no rules about the kind of music you can create, the kind of music videos you can make, and the way you can present yourself. You can like hone in on whatever it is that you are excited about, and it will probably find its audience at some stage.
Dude. And I have to acknowledge and that I really like love the way like you're putting it right now, and I think that's also like a very special ability to be able to abstract it in a way that you're putting it, and like distill the core principle of it, right? Just because like one thing that I would not wish, and like it will happen, and it happens in the genre, is that like people see aesthetics, and it's like, you know, you, and it's like baked into the genre also. Like you have a part that works with a specific guitar tone, and like we're also like guilty of that, obviously, because it's not like we're so original, right? But like if something is just based on, yeah, I want to sound like this band, I want to like have it mixed like that, I will like use their presets, I will use their song structures, I will use the same influences. Like people say like, yeah, I'm just taking influence, and I think that's maybe something like plagues modern metal. If you like look at like a lot of upcoming bands, like no offense, it's just like how I see it. And like the way you put it is like that's the way I personally would love, like that's the message I want to get across. Like pick what you really are passionate about, like what resonates with you. And like if this record inspires somebody to do something similar, I would love to like the similar thing to be like, hey, what is special about like my upcoming, my influences, what do I have in my like surroundings that I can take to express like my reality and my, the way that I want to do music. Just because I'm not a big fan of just like taking, yeah, the aesthetics of how something looks, sounds, and feels, and just like making a carbon copy, and like also like measuring the value of the music by like how close you got to that. And I think that's a necessary step you will have in your artistic journey. If you listen to our first EP, it's also not the most original thing out there, right? But again, like if there's something like we're putting out there, I think it should be that, and it's a message that I can proudly stand behind.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was getting at. Like if we, we might see bands going like, "Oh, that's worked," and then they have a somewhat similar visual aesthetic and sound. It's like that's not the point that we're hoping to be inspired here. It's like it's more whatever it is that you're interested in, and channel that for what that is. And I think it'll be hard to detect those that really pick up on that because it could be something completely different from yourselves, but they may down the line say, "Yeah, we heard your album and it made us think actually maybe we could do something a little bit more experimentally what we are interested in doing, and that's how we ended up all the way over here." That'd be
Yeah,
amazing.
and I also like have to mention in a way, it will never be as easy as just like doing something that somebody else has done and that will work, just because like the like depending on what you're focused on, right? But like the whole equation of like the success of a project is so complex, and there are so many things that play into that, and that are like, can be downsides and upsides as well there. And for instance, like at certain points of like rolling out these singles, I have been worried that we're just like too all over the place. Just because, like, for instance, if you look at a band, like, yeah, like you could argue, okay, Vianova, they proved that if you just like you do expressive stuff, people will love it, and then you will like succeed as an artist. But however, or like if you do like stuff that's all over the place, however, there are like bands like, for instance, and I'm not saying they're worse, it's just a good counter argument, like Throne, for instance, like they know what they're doing. Like it's very much like they figured out just their style. They're doing it extremely well. So like every time, like maybe they're like something that is like more hip hopish with like a trap beat or whatever, but like every time like they're teasing something new, or like they've done it in the past, like I as a if I'm a fan, I know like, dude, yeah, I will get a song that's like 2.5 minutes, and it will like be agonizing and heavy, and I will like want to like punch the wall, right? And I can get hyped, and like I think that my expectations, in a way, like best case, they will be fulfilled. Maybe they will like even like exceed my expectations, just because like they've been doing it a little bit smarter. There's a cool little part that I didn't anticipate, but like ultimately, like if I want like the music and I'm a Throne fan, I will probably not be disappointed. And like we have like, for us, it's been like, okay, Mas Rapido's out, everybody's like, yeah, that's a great band, I hope every song's like that. We're like, no, next song's Wheel of Fortune. We put it out as like a Bruno Mars funk kind of metalcore thingy with like, like choir vocals, and I like, before that, like I really love that song. We put so much work into the video, but I was like, man, this shit can like bomb so hard. You know what I mean? It's not, I'm not like, I wasn't thinking like you have to be realistic about this stuff. I wasn't like, yeah, man, and now we're going to show the world that Vianova is so different. But I was like, yeah, if you liked Mas Rapido, like there is the probability that you will like not like Wheel of Fortune, right? So you put that out, and then after Wheel of Fortune, we're like doing Melancholic, which is also like not, I think none of these really have been like guaranteed successes. And I don't want to like make a martyr out of a band. It's just like it, like that's an aspect I think that has been risky, that like our singles have been, in a way, like you could say, yeah, there's Vianova and all of them, but like there's no guarantee that if you like one song you will like the other. Like they're all like
Mm.
very different. um However, like one thing I realized down the line, or like I had to keep in mind, and it's hard, like it's something that you lose out of sight, obviously, with like just like putting out singles because it's like very short term focused, obviously, is that that there's an overarching like spirit and theme to the whole thing, right? So like
Mm.
we have like these core values in the band that are contained in every song in a way, right? And like one thing that made me like really was satisfying for me was like reading those comments of like, yeah man, I wasn't sure like how well these songs would fit in an album, but then I listened to the whole album and it made sense, right? So like, because like, yes, we put out a lot of singles, but there are songs like we put in time into the album as an album experience. Like there are songs that were written to be like parts of, like specific, like part of a specific just time in the album. For instance, like Ooh Yeah Yeah, it was like we were like, okay, we need this heavy song, like we're lacking one more heavy song. It has to be like at the end of the album, like we need that because like if we don't have that, it will be like future nostalgia into obsolete. You will have like two ballads, probably like won't sit right in the context of an album, right? So like I think that's why it worked out in the end, and I really like had to keep that in mind, be like, okay, there's like a bigger plan that we're sticking to, and we just like need the patience to go through with it. And also like with stuff like that, like I think like bands like Bring Me the Horizon have proven it over time that you can really condition your fans, I think, and like condition their expectations where they're like, okay, at this point I know I will have no expectations for these singles. Like the last five have been like this. There are chances that I won't like it. Maybe I will like it on like the fifth listen. Maybe I won't. Maybe I will like the next album. You know what I mean? So like they can have like a more nuanced way of like engaging with the material. And that's something that I like, as I'm seeing it right now, has like worked out, which is super cool.
Yeah, certainly. I get the impression from yourselves that you value creative freedom, and by doing this, you're going to end up, as you say, kind of conditioning in a way the audience to allow you that creative freedom because they're kind of that's part of the charm of this band is you don't necessarily know what flavor you're going to get next, but that's not necessarily the only road. And as we're kind of alluding to earlier, like whatever it is that you're into doing, there's plenty of bands like Throne is a good example. I think Bill Murray as well, where I kind of know what I'm going to get from the next Bill Murray song, but I'm so in and I love it. It's not like all I value is something creative and wild and new. I like having a buffet of variety of things that different bands offer, and they're all possible and they can all be successful. Generally, if they're authentic enough and they dive in, or maybe if they're inauthentic and they just really really hone it to an exact art. It's like that. I can also really enjoy very over, I guess written or produced pop songs. Like
Yeah,
fucking
and
love that
I
stuff as
mean, we
well.
have to acknowledge that, like, even that, like, if you're doing it right, like, that's still not easy to do,
Yeah,
right? And it's a very,
absolutely.
like, competitive space to be in there, right? So, like, I think the bands that are, like, killing it there is because, like, mostly probably, like, they just write the catchiest songs, or, like, also, like, all of those bands, like, they sound huge live, which is also not something that is like that you just do, you know what I mean? So it's not
Yeah,
like those bands, they like, yeah, they just have acid and they write the catchy song and their career takes off. No, it's still like if you really do it right, like all of this is hard work. There's no way around it, really.
yeah. One thing I'd love to touch on is in the lyrics of I think it's Oh Yeah Yeah. You're saying like been doing this for 10 years and you still feel like a failure. Has the delivery of this album and the reception of it changed that internally for you at all? Is that still something you're kind of internally fighting against?
I would say yes and no. um I mean, that's an intense line.
Yeah.
And obviously an intense way to put it, but I think like it's just like I have to mention, I think my background is just that like I have a history of, I think, and it's not an arrogant thing to say, but like I know like I have some natural gifts in some areas of my life, and I know that maybe I have a quick brain for some things. Like I think I'm an ADHD person. I took an IQ test when I was 12, so I know in a way what like my brain can do. However, like I sucked at school, and like I was always a person that, like, in art, like I had the art like expanded course in like in my high school, and like the English course, like both of those I had like A grades, and like the rest I was just like shit at, you know what I mean? So like I always, like, I have this history of just like in a way knowing that I'm capable of just like doing something and like getting that somewhere, but also like getting like external feedback where I just feel like I just suck ass. Right. And I think that's probably like something that is very like, and I've been diagnosed with like some sort of just attention deficiency thingy when I was a kid. And I know that's a thing. Like everybody's ADHD, obviously, but I know that like, and that's something that my life has shown where like I'm so bad at some parts of my life. And like there are some where like my brain really latches onto those and is able to like just crush through them. Right. But like part of that is like that, like the usual ways of just approaching life and doing stuff that they seemed very impossible for me to like navigate, right? Which like for me, like I always felt like an underachiever and therefore like a loser, right? I'm being very like how do you say it? Like very open with this. I hope this doesn't make you like uncomfortable in any way. Just
No,
like
no, not at all.
oversharing so hard.
No, we're fine.
Yeah. So like that's definitely a thing, and I think like in a way like this whole music thing like it um I mean, like, I think like when I was like 16, 17ish and I started like singing and like screaming out of just out of fun, like that was one of the first times at that time as a teenager where I was like, damn, oh man, my friends say that I can scream well. Like obviously like a few years later I would say I was shit, but like at that time I felt like I could do it well. So like there was something of me like attaching like value to that, right? Because I was like, yeah, this is the first time in this period of my life where I actually feel like I can do something um maybe better than somebody else, right? Which is not a healthy dynamic, I think, and probably a lot of like the driving forces behind a lot of artists are probably like have two sides to them, right? So in a way, like that's the reason I think why I ended up just like pursuing this, um, just like maybe a little bit more than like just my peers at the time, like my first like bands with friends, you know what I mean? A lot of those guys are not really doing that anymore, and you have to be a little bit like psycho to pursue it to that degree. And then I ended up in Vianova when I was 19, and I in a way I feel like Felix, our guitarist, like I can't speak for him, but I know it's like it's funny because like he's a bit similar in a way where like he was also underachiever, but like also like gifted in some ways, but like sucked ass in school and like had trouble there and like was just like stumbling through his early 20s, but like you can tell that he's clearly gifted in like music, right? um so like there's this aspect that has been a driving force, I think, behind my motivation. Like there's the love of like the music and like the passion behind it, but also like being like fuck, like this is in a way my chance of being good at something, really, if I'm like being so honest and bold about it. However, I'm a guy, like I try to be realistic about things, and like you have to be really realistic and skeptical about all of this to do it right, just because there's so many factors. And like statistically speaking, you know there are like in our Berlin scene, like we have grown up in the scene, we've played shows here, like there are 20 bands that we've played with, and we're the one that has been like being like like took this step out of like 20 from like, which is crazy if you view it statistically. And I'm not saying
Mm.
that to shit on them, it's just that like for me the thought that we are that band, that's wild. And it's not something like when you view it like that, you won't be like, yeah man, I will win the lottery, I will be like, you would like you would have to be really like full of yourself to think like, yeah dude, I will be that band. And like now, like you're just like every time you're just stepping up into a different tier, like right, like when we were like starting out at Rising Empire, we had like 20K listeners. I look around at Germany, there are so many bands at our level that are so good, right? And like the chances, like statistically speaking, again, of those being around in 10 years, we will see about that. We will see if we are
Mm.
even around at that time. You know what I mean? So like they're like, if you like view it holistically from like this perspective, there's like maybe I'm like like how do we say it? Like maybe I'm just viewing it too negatively, but like there are a lot of factors that could contribute to you exactly not doing that. But like I was like, dude, like we're so far into this. I feel like this is the one thing that gives me, or like at the time, like one of the things that gives me the feeling that I am actually competent about doing something. So like I felt like I have to take this to the next level. You know what I mean? Like I have to, like it's not like, yeah, I have to make it work, I have to make it out the trenches, I'm I'm a middle class guy from Germany, it's not that bad. Obviously, but like there's this psychological effect. And that's the thing, right? If like your if your standard for things, like you always like take it higher and you're always comparing yourself to the higher step, which is necessary to take it to the next level and like
Mm.
make it better. Like the other side of that is that you're like, you know let's say, yeah, because like depending on where you at, like I'm, for instance, I'm at the studio like recording our two EPs, and the studio is a rehearsal room and it's me alone, and I have friends that are just like out there just like having fun on the weekends, and I'm like alone in a rehearsal room like screaming. And I'm like, yeah man, this is kind of weird, and I could be a guy in my early 20s just like chilling with friends and like trying to just pursue a job and maybe even have like a better life doing that. So like there are certain times, like a lot of times, like during like that the time where I would just like just consider like the factors that may contribute to like us, like this not even like having a chance of like taking off like anywhere, right? But like also like the amount of energy and like input you have to do to like to take this anywhere is like so high, so you have to do it regardless. You're holding on to this weird almost like hope. It's what I'm getting at, how it's
Yes.
like the the realistic expectations are like so against you, but like you still have to hold on to doing it. And while you're doing it, if you're like so self-aware, like I'm like, this is stupid, I'm in my rehearsal room, I'm screaming, this is a weird hobby. It's like at those times it's not even connecting me to people, just because like when I'm recording stuff alone, when I'm cutting content alone, I'm just at my computer. It's not like I'm this rock star guy traveling the world and I'm part of a scene. No, I'm just like alone, like doing this alone. Like I feel like a fucking loser. You know what I mean? Like it's very hard to say, but like I'm just putting it into words where like those are like very unpleasant factors of those. And like you could say that this is a very like strong motivator that I think like combined with the passion for the medium can take you places. However, it's obviously not very um I think like it's something that I need to take care of in the long run, and like just push that like best case, have that not like take up so much space, right? Like spend a lot of time talking about that, but maybe it's just cool because like some people will be like, yeah guys, you're killing it, you're doing this and that, and I don't want to seem ungrateful, but I just like, if we mention that, I think I have to like put it into perspective and just like, yeah, talk about it the way I feel about it.
Think I entirely understand. I mean, I've spent most of my 20s, trying to make it in a band, and I knew full well this is probably not going to happen. It's like, but if you allow yourself 1% to believe and understand that, then you have a 0% chance of making it. It's like, well, someone does. So like, you have to have that focus and commitment to believe in it to keep it going, and somehow you have to ignore even your own, not even just the people around you, but the people, the inner thoughts being like, why are you bothering with this? Like, no one's gonna listen to this, whatever. And I sort of feel, listening to this album, I got this odd feeling that this felt like a potential last stand. Like you're compelled to do this. And I think lyrically it's like, at what point, am I going to like resign myself? Like this is, I've done everything I can. And actually I'm putting all of my soul and vulnerability into this. If it doesn't work out and we eventually go, maybe I'll try a different life, I've at least put everything out there for what I could. Is that something that in any way occurred during that? 'Cause also there's hints in the 2 more hours that like it was difficult and it was impacting your life, this kind of consuming thing that you're dedicating to. Like there's a lot of hope that it's going to work, which thankfully I think it has, but you don't know in the moment.
Are you basically asking me like, did you consider quitting your career? um I'm dude, it's like hard to say, just because like it's such a, that the whole music thing is like so like deep ingrained, just because like it's part of your, like just like your passion, your day-to-day life, it's part of your identity, right? So like um I think for now we're not intending on quitting. But there obviously there have been points where like I've asked myself like, oh, is this something I should do? However, this is something I think like you just like renegotiate with yourself, and you're like, yeah, I will at least like try to give this my all. And like it's like that with like right now where we are as a band, where like the next step probably is like international touring. So that's something we have never done before. And there's the possibility that we do that and we're like, wow, this sucks and we're dying. So we will not do it. I hope it's not the case because, like, in a way, it's like this glamorized thing that I've, like, I've glamorized my whole like early 20 life. I'm like, yeah, I want to tour. I want to tour. I want to go tour Europe and USA. And like when I do that, I will be happy. I won't be happy. Obviously, it will not fulfill me like ultimately for the rest of my life. But there are always these aspects, and I think like also one good step to take is just like to reevaluate like where you put your goals and what motivates you and like how you set up your life. Because one thing that is for sure, like I know that like making art and music, that's something that I really enjoy. It really makes me happy. I'm really passionate about vocals and singing. And I also know that it just like forces me to not be a better person, but like it's also very uncomfortable just because like you're forced to always engage with stuff to like make it happen or like keep the ball rolling. So I would wish for a life where in a way I'm always like creatively engaged. But I can't say like how I will feel about that. Like ask me in 2 years
Yeah.
when we've done it.
Well, I'm on your behalf. I'm incredibly optimistic. Like it seems very obvious to me that this appears to be yours and the rest of the guys in the band. This is what you should be doing. Like I think we're still actually in a very very early stage of what it will eventually be a large portion of rock music enjoyers catching on to Vianova and be like, holy fucking shit.
Yeah, but like it's that's something I have also spent some time like thinking about because like it's really funny to me just because like I've heard this a lot in the last like few weeks, right? Like this, oh yeah, you guys are just at the start. I never had a doubt. I knew with the second single. But however, dude, and I don't want to be like you don't know like what you're talking about. I totally get like why you would say this. And for me, I was also like, yeah, when I heard Sundowning by Sleep Token, I already knew that these guys, like if there's one band in this generation that can like take metal to the mainstream, it's Sleep Token. I knew it back then. I say it all of the time about like other bands, right? However, with us or like me, dude, when you're behind the wheel, right, and like you are the person, like you're making those decisions. You're like, okay, how many songs do we need? Like, do we really need this part? I think we need this song. What are the themes? What are the production choices? How should we do this? Like, how should we brand the band? What should we do for the music videos? Like, when you're doing all that, how should we do the marketing? Like, when you're responsible for all those steps, like it's I really like can't subscribe. Like I can't like accept this feeling of yeah, it will be all right just because I know it's not like I'm the guy like taking it. I'm not watching it unfold, which is awesome to do as a fan, and I do it again all the time because I'm like they're like yeah, this will be great. You guys will like the next album will be better. I'm like how how will it be better? I'm thinking about it right now. I'm like okay, what should
Yeah.
be the themes? Like what
The
should we do?
future's foggy to you because you
Yeah,
have to decide what it is.
yeah. I'm like how like okay the like we'll do great in the future. How will we do great in the future? Like how should we set things up? That's all. Like like we're doing that right now. We're making that decision, and
Mm.
I would not want to make the mistake of leaning back right now and be like, yeah, man, we're this band. We just put out this album. We're great because like there's still so many things we have to work on to like get to a certain level and make this uh, long lasting legacy. You know what I mean? And there are so many bands where like you hear the first album, it's great, and then like 5 albums later, people on Reddit they're like, yeah, so what exactly happened to um I became the Starfish? Their first album was like so great, and then like after that they just so you know what I mean? Like so
Yeah, I
that's a thing,
totally get
man.
that.
So like I don't want to like shit on you for like that statement. I just like it's not just
I don't
something
take
that
it that
has
way.
been what I mean. It
I
has been in my mind. It's so funny to me.
being the artist that is in the creative driving seat, I don't think you can take that on board. I think that was just me complimenting what I've seen thus
No,
far,
no,
and,
I
and
really, I
hoping and
really
believing.
appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I'm very bad at taking compliments, and I,
So
I, I know that, right? So I hope I'm not driving you crazy here.
no, 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 absolutely grand. Um, I suppose then perhaps as we come to a close here, I
Dude,
don't know. This,
before we do that, I also have one
oh,
question that I would like to
oh,
ask
please.
you. But like, you can do your question first.
Okay, sure. Well, what I was going to ask there is, it's I imagine the songwriting will have finished some months ago for this album, and you probably haven't just paused your creativity at that stage. I'm assuming you're noodling on some ideas here and there, and you don't have to say anything about what's next. But do you have? I guess we kind of alluded to it in the previous chat we just had there, but do you have the startings of an idea of where you collectively would think you might go, or is that something you're still trying to figure out?
Yeah, I will be totally transparent about that. There have been like some ideas for some stuff that we've been piling on. However, like right now, you know, if you grow as a band, like so exponentially as we have, like now we're um like just dealing with a lot of stuff that is piling on, like getting our internal structures reorganized, booking stuff, getting ready for some opportunities that are coming up, rehearsing more so we can like, match the material on, on the album, right? So like right now we don't have a lot of time for writing, I'll be honest. There's some stuff that we want to do, um where we like just started scheduling some stuff. However, like we, you know, I like I wouldn't say that we have like started like really approaching the next big project. I'll be honest, just because like right now we're dealing with just a lot of just like band stuff that we want to do, and like we're also like all working on the side. You have to mention that.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Totally makes sense. Yeah.
yeah,
Exciting though. I'm just curious.
yeah. No,
Um,
and like I won't say more about like what we want to like are considering doing, just because it would ruin some surprises.
of course, of course.
Yeah, cool, dude. In that case, if I can, I would like to finish this
Please.
off with my question, just because, like, as you mentioned before, at the start of our rollout, you've been one person that has been a little bit more critical of like what we've been doing, and not like that you've been like putting it down. Just it's something that hasn't like fully resonated with you, and like you
Yeah.
let me know in our like recent Instagram conversation that this has like for some reason the album has clicked with you and you're like fully on board now. So like what would interest me really is just like, how did that happen for you? Was there something that made that happen, and how has your perception of the record like changed, like compared to when you first listened to it? Is
Yeah.
something that would really interest me.
It's a good question. And it's something that I try to figure out myself. Not only do I, respond to music when I listen to it in real time, and then I also try and kind of analyze it. I'm interested in finding out why I think the way I think about things and how things change over time. And I think before I made sense of things like growing to love some music because there are Easter eggs in there, and repeat listens, you notice them, and that enriches the song for you. I think that is sometimes true, or often true. But in this case, what's quite interesting is I think because of the way that I listen to music, I pay attention to all of the details. So the drumming and the guitars and the bass and the vocals and the song structures and reverb or production techniques, which overloads my brain already a little bit. And so when there's surprising twists and turns, then my brain has even more questions like, wow, how? And I'm trying to process all of that. So on a very particularly unusual and surprising song, first time round, it's much harder for me to go like, that was really enjoyable. Like there were bits I liked, bits that confused me. I don't know how I feel about this. And the ones largely on first listen that click more are when there are surprises. I love surprises. I like twists and turns. I like risks and creative gambles. But maybe there's one or two big ones. My brain can process that as long with everything else and be like, I really like these two things that really stood out. But in order for some of this music to click in particular, I needed to listen to it in the background. I needed to have it on while I was commuting to the office, for example. And I could put on Squire Talk. And I'm just vibing out to the fucking groove. And I'm half dancing on a train platform, just fucking rock it because of the groove and how, and the, I was listening to it, appreciating. I've already looked at the details. They're fascinating. They're interesting. I could then take it in from a kind of helicopter view and then notice that, and this detail's coming up that I like, and I enjoyed the way that the groove slipped into that. I kind of needed to appreciate it on a couple of different levels. And then also part of it will be the more I hear something, the more I understand the structure, the less surprising and complicated it becomes. And I get closer to perhaps where, I mean, not at the same level, obviously, but yourself be looking at it, be going, I don't think this is that complicated because you know every single note and every single beat and the transitions. So you're like, I have the map in my head. I now have the map in my head of this album, and I'm like, can't wait to traverse this map journey again. And then because of all the details in it, it just enriches over time.
So now you get to vibe out.
Now I can just fucking vibe
Yeah.
out, mate.
Are you now cool with the autotune on Squire Talk?
Yeah, what's interesting about that is because obviously I'm not into overt autotune generally or vocoder work unless it's done as a momentary stylistic choice, which I can enjoy and I can get it thematically. Or some bands, it kind of is part of the sound in a way that I can get on board with somehow. But I couldn't believe how long that went in Squire Talk. I'm like, wow. But I think the reason why I kind of enjoyed it is because it was so over the top, like clearly sounded like keyboards being played of the vocal notes. I'm like, that's not there because it was a bad vocal taking, like, let's tidy this up and auto-tune it. That's done as an instrumental layer, and then I appreciated it on that level, and I'm sure there's some commentary within that for, modern music somehow. But
No, it's so funny. I just have to add that as a closing statement, if I may. Um, it has been funny seeing that, just because like that was a very controversial thing. Obviously, it's a bold move, and just like some people like, yeah, this sucks. He can't sing. Other people like, no, you don't get it. It's part of the concept and the overarching like story with the label because they're getting forced to do it. But like ultimately, I've been like at the time listening to a lot of Kanye West. And I was like, yeah, 808s and Heartbreaks, man, that's the shit. and and like we just did it, and like the vibe was on like during the writing session. It was just like, yeah, that's like I was like, how about we add like auto tune with like distortion on it, like in this song, and everybody's like, yeah. And how about we do this rap part on the guitar chucks? I don't think this has been like done before. And everyone's like, yeah. And how about like at the on the prog part when like the groove is going on, but like um Felix is playing those like very proggy chords that are like also like going through different keys. It's so funny because like with the autotune, like we had to program it just because the key is different every like chord change, like in the pre-chorus that heaven at the crowd change for you in a while. Can't sing it right now. But like, that's so funny to me because like the point of autotune is like, okay, you're in key, you can sing, but like we had to program it so it's actually like in key for each individual phrase, which was a pain in the
wow.
ass for Leon. But it was like, yeah, man, that's so awesome. And in my mind, it's like if you take the autotune away, you have this like really grand, epic, big intro metalcore song with like choir and organs and that's so lame, just that's so like, look at us, we're like this big progressive metal band and this is so epic. Listen to the epic album, like it needs that, like, as I said, this like dangerous ingredient that like is kind of like, bro, this is like,
It was whimsy.
it's whimsy and fun, and it fits the theme. Like obviously it's a stylistic choice like that fits the underlying theme of the whole song. It's not like it's just for aesthetics. But like in my mind, at a certain point, I was like, yeah, should we have taken it away? And I'm like, yeah, no, the song would have been like so lame if we didn't have it. Like, not, it wouldn't have been so lame. It's still a cool song. The instrumentals are great, but on like for me, it elevated that song just because it made it so much bolder in a way.
Yeah.
And if you're used to like that texture, like for me, I was like, yeah, it's cool. It's one song on the album. Obviously, like there will be metalheads that haven't listened to autotune since like the last time somebody forced them to listen to Britney Spears. I don't know, So like, yeah, they will have a hard time. But yeah, just funny observation there. Yeah, that's it
Yeah,
for that.
yeah. I messaged my Discord community. This was like, I guess, 3-4 weeks ago, maybe. The album had been out for about 4 or 5 days, and I just messaged them out of nowhere because I was on my way to work. I was like, Squire Talk just clicked for me. I was like, I was vibing. I was like, I'm in. And then everything else started to unlock as well. And like, I was in an unusual position. Not that this fucking matters at all. It's one man's opinion, but I was in this odd position. I was like, my favorite song of the year, and there's still time to go. Like, we're in October, it's a couple months more of new music, so this might change. But my favorite song of the year has been Whatever All Right since that song came out, and that has not changed. Like, I might end up with an album that is not my favorite album of the year, but there's one of the best song of the year on it. It's like, how
Which is
interesting.
fair, dude. It's fair.
Oh yeah, and that can totally happen. Like, that's not, But I was just like, that's so. It just says so much about how unusual and varied the album is. That is, it was looking very likely. But I at this point, actually, I have it here. This for me is the best album to come out this year.
Thank you so
And
much,
there's
man.
been fucking amazing albums this year, you know. But that for me is so surprising and gorgeous and groovy and such a journey, and it's just fuck tons of detail in there. And I love the humanity within it. The whole thing, I think, is a complete triumph, and I'm so honored to have been able to be enjoying that unusual journey on the way and have my journey of not really vibing with and coming to where I am now, and being able to chat to you about those details has been a total honor. So
Yeah, thank
it's
you
been a
so much,
joy,
dude.
man.
My voice. Oh my god. Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate the love. It's just cool to hear that you've given this an honest chance because for me, like those have been my favorite experiences with music where something was like maybe a bit more foreign to me when I first listened to it and then I took some time to get in it and like it clicked and became one of my favorite record or artists. So like yeah, I'm happy that we were able to give you that experience and yeah, thank you for also like just like getting the word out. Obviously you've been supporting this record, even though some songs didn't click, some clicked, you still put out the reactions and spread the word. So like I have to contribute some part of the success of this album to you and the other guys in the reaction community, so thank you for that.
Well, that's a huge honor on my part. So thank you for that as well. So upcoming, you've got a tour. Hopefully, your voice is going to get back up to
Yeah,
strength again. But you're coming to the UK. You're doing some gigs in Europe as well. So people should look out for
yeah,
those.
so we are doing a small run with Oral Eyes in Germany and Austria in November. There are still some tickets left for Munich and another city, and we're doing the UK in February with the
Yes.
Shields, right? So like get your tickets, see us live, and I will not sound like that on stage, hopefully.
Yes. No, I'm very much looking forward to taking in the live sex. I'm not seeing you guys as yet, but I believe I'll be going down to Brighton, so that should be fun. But
Nice, cool. See you,
yeah,
dude.
we'll see you soon. Thank you very much again,
Thanks
Alex.
for having me, man. It was a pleasure.
Alex Kerski there from Vianova talking about that amazing album, Hit It, and where the band find themselves right now. Make sure you check out that album, but also the links in the description to Vianova's socials so you can keep up to date with what they're doing in new releases and tours in future. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. It is free to do so over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and also on YouTube. And there'll be more interviews like this very soon. So see you then.